Welcome everyone to the second podcast of Inside Out Innovation. Today I have a very special guest, which I'm very excited about because we worked for quite some time together, but we never really got the time to get to know ourselves. And basically, I spent a little time on researching who is Henrik. First of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Henrik.
Nice to be here.
Henrik Feldt. I spent a little time to research on you to how to make an introduction to Henrik Feldt. I invited you, let's make it a little story. I invited you last week on the podcast and I said, I make a podcast for geniuses and people who innovate. And you seemed very flattered to me. And then I started looking more and more into your story and into your journey. And basically, it strengthened my hypothesis because what I read is like the classics. It's like you're a serial entrepreneur, and we can get into that. But you also have quite some experiences in open source, and there is some things that you did in the past, especially F#. So, and there's also consulting things that happened, which look to me very like your whole journey to me looks like a strategically thought out masterpiece. Because if you look into it, it's like it looks like you used the open source ecosystem to your advantage, also with your ventures and your consultancy work. Also, of course, to gain the required experience with your ventures. For example, with Quito, and it looks like the next ventures, which then was Caustic, as far as I understand, and now Minimist. It looks like you tackle the more and more and the more complex and bigger problems. And that's where we're here now. And first of all, I wanted to start with basically two questions, one of which is like, did I get that straight, or how did it turn out? I mean, life turns out to be different than expected usually.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't say that it's been a straight line, and you give me much more credit than what was intentional in the choosing of my career path. But it is true that I do love building things, both open source, especially like a while ago, but also companies. And sort of it makes me very happy when I see people use my code, my software, my products. So I think that sort of the geist of feeling what you build used and people appreciate it, that has always been driving me in some way or form. So I did start with open source quite early. So originally I'm self-taught engineer. I started working as a consultant at 16 when I had taught myself enough to be to use it in anger. Moved away from home, started consulting. And then I did that for a little while. But then I also realized it would be nice to get an education. So I applied for some unis, studied in London at Imperial College, and then moved back to Stockholm, studied a bit there. But ultimately, while academia is very interesting in many ways, I think that my heart is with the doing rather than the thinking. But if you can have both at the same time, that's optimal. So that's why I want to build things that haven't been built before, if I can.
Okay, that sounds so amazing. I read this, that you started consulting with 16. Maybe talk a little bit about this. How did you get the skills to consult someone, and what exactly did you start?
Well, it was like I wasn't really the consulting advisor, but more like a consultant in programming. So I taught myself how to first build websites and then build enterprise systems. Sort of started on the Microsoft tech stack when they released .NET 1.0. I was in classic ASP, and I realized that they called it ASP.NET. So yeah, I'll go there. It turned out it was a completely different framework. Everything was different. And you needed this thing called a license for Visual Studio.
Yes.
Very different from the hacker,
very different
PHP thing, ASP Classic. But I persisted, and that's what I started in. So I was a C# engineer for about 7 years or so before moving predominantly into F#. And this was also like my way of doing that was doing open source. So I was active in the Castle project, and then later I was doing a web server called Suave. And I have my own testing framework there called Expecto
and some logging.
And Loggery, yes. True. And they have also been sort of helping me at work. So anytime that I've been sort of thinking, if I can apply open source to my job and vice versa, contribute back with open source, everyone gains.
Yes.
And that's how many of these frameworks came to pass. I also discovered sort of the hard way that it is really hard to, especially in a niche language like F#, make a living. Yes. So I did a lot of open source, but then the developer population to sort of finance that full time wasn't quite there. Not to mention that it can be hard with a giant in the room, Microsoft, sort of stealing the air a little bit. If you compare to other open source languages like Python, Ruby, for example, Elixir, and so on.
Okay. When did you start to learn about coding yourself?
It was quite early. I think I was like 11, 12, thereabouts. Okay. I went to the city library and I found these tomes, learn yourself C# in 24 hours. But it was like this thick. So it would have taken you just a month to read it all. Yeah. And, they had these lines of code written out. No interactivity and like nothing online, a little bit. I was avid consumer of patterns and practices from Microsoft. Like they had this enterprise. I was fascinated by the enterprise of the building of the large software and building it correctly.
Yes. That's what I feel when we work together. It's like building things correctly. That's the vibe I got. It's like, you're not just, because nowadays we live in this startup MVP world. Everybody builds an MVP and
vibe code it over the weekend,
and
right?
Vibe code it over the weekend. But especially also the last time where we talked a bit about architecture, it's like you have a very precise understanding of how to build a very robust, scalable, high-performant system that really, really, really works.
That was like my niche. That's what I snowed into.
Yeah.
So when I started open source, I was fascinated by an open source clone of Hibernate and all the enterprise stuff around. So aspect-oriented programming, object relational mapping, and also IOC, inversion of control, dependency injection, and how to make software components come together on a sort of software architecture level, just in one single service. And then I partook in this open source, but for .NET, that cloned a lot of that functionality.
Yes.
And then specifically the transaction aspect-oriented programming framework. So for those who don't know, aspects are like attributes you add on to methods that then change their behavior. So if you wanted a business process to be atomic, either succeed or fail, then you can add an aspect saying this is in a transaction, and then that will be ambiently true for all of the things interacting with the database or queuing systems, and it will wrap all of these steps that you perform in a two-phase commit transaction, a distributed transaction. That was the idea. So this aspect-oriented framework was to make correctness transparent to the programmer. They would basically slap on transactional and everything would be perfect.
Yeah.
Or that was the idea.
Okay. I heard some sentence from you, which is like a backend or a system has to deal with the real world events.
Mm-hmm.
And there it's like I have the feeling when I hear these things or when I read these things, it's like there is some philosophy to finding the truth or interacting with the truth. How would you go about it? Because for me, the philosophy is very interesting behind it. What drives you there? What is the interesting part?
Well, it's a bit of a dichotomy, right? It's a paradox that to find the truth of the real world events that are also almost by definition unspecified.
Yes.
How do you know exactly how the workflow works? How the processes are. Businesses there are made up by humans into one big organism, basically. And then what you can do as an engineer is that you can observe, you can prod and query, right? But sometimes you can change, but often it's all about trying to understand, asking the right questions and modeling it correctly. So like for Minimist, we're building the future of re-commerce with agents. Now, what does that even mean, right?
Yeah, exactly. We talked a lot about it.
Yeah. And to an extent, that is finding the processes that people can benefit from automating, from having AI help them with. And then in order to know how to automate something, we have to look at what people are doing. And that is then the real world events, or events in this case that we were talking was eventing, as in finding the business events of the system and then codifying how those interact with processes.
Yeah. You talked about minimist. That's your current venture.
Precisely.
A series of at least 3 or 4 that you have done in the past. How was the journey up to the part to start with minimist, and how did it start? And what is the current challenge? I mean, what is the big challenge? You're tackling the bigger and bigger problems here, right?
Yeah. Maybe I start a bit with a journey.
Yes.
So I've had a few startups. 3 before minimist, and so this is the 4th, if you don't count the consulting. So it was like touchscreens in malls to help people find their way. That was something I did over a summer with some people who funded it when I was in college. Then there was Q2, which was automated bookkeeping. Then there was Cosic, which is still actually running to an extent, which is something called a marketing mix model. So that went much more into AI. And what we do is we look at spend of marketing channels. So you spend on TV, you spend on Facebook, and then you have this mix and you have this revenue in the end, but you don't know how much each channel contributed to the revenue. So you need to decorrelate and sort of disambiguate which channel gave you the revenue in the end. So attribute which channel gave you the revenue.
And it gets harder and harder with GDPR, I guess.
Yeah. Well, technically, if you use stats like Cosic does, statistics, then it's easier, right?
Yes,
because
it is
you don't
easier.
have
Yes,
personal
but
data.
if you go the classic route with the pixels and tracking everything,
then you have no chance anymore. You can get parts of it, and you can measure like a few campaigns against each other, but it's really hard to get like total attribution, especially if you have brand building exercises, like you broadcast your brand on TV, and then you try and understand, does that trickle down to actually increasing the performance of low funnel marketing? So that's what Cosic is about. But through each of these steps, or each of these companies, I'd say I made my fair share of mistakes, right? Initially, it was primarily around, like, I had no idea what I was doing. I was in college. So my co-founders weren't committed, and we had no contracts, and like everything was just YOLO. In the second time, then I spent 5 years. We were 3 employees for most of that time. I funded it myself by part consulting, and then we kind of didn't succeed because we didn't have external funding. So it became a bit diluted, and we might have chosen a little bit too advanced tech for some processes. We also didn't have the right people, like we didn't have any UX people, UI people, but that was due to lack of funding. So I learned the lesson that if you want to build a startup, especially if you want to build an enterprise startup tackling a wide problem like accounting, you have to have the budget to do so. So with Cosic, I went in and I immediately applied for funding. And it's a venture capital funded company with also investors, high investors. It went quite well, and we do have customers. It hasn't scaled in the way that we hoped because there was this funding crash during 2023 that sort of completely erased valuations. Now it's better again, but not at the same level. So I think I learned on primarily, ironically, how to do marketing and sales.
Yes.
Because I wasn't doing enough. I was iterating closely, and this is something I learned from previous startups, iterating closely with customers on their problems. But we weren't really broadcasting who we were. We weren't like in podcasts or writing enough on LinkedIn, which meant people didn't know about us. So we had a hard time selling easily. It was like long sales cycles and so on. And we didn't have very driven salespeople. So I learned a lot about how not to do marketing and sales during my marketing startups, but also how to do it, of course. And I'm now trying to apply those lessons to Minimist.
Yeah.
So Minimist was started because after doing a bout of consulting and working for for a financial services company briefly as an architect. I decided that I wanted to sort of do a world tour and just be a digital nomad, as in someone traveling the world and working at the same time. So I came to Vienna first. And
that's a good choice.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
The best capital of the world for quality of life, right? That's what they say.
That's what they say, exactly. That's what some data says.
Yeah. As someone living in Stockholm, I may have a fish to fry about that. But I met Stefan again. He used to live in Stockholm at Spotify. And we stayed together for a bit. Originally planned to be 2 weeks. I had booked that I was going to Morocco to do some kite surfing, and 2 days before there was an earthquake, and Marrakesh had obviously serious issues from this. People died and so on, and I didn't feel that I could travel there and disrupt their work, saving people, of course. So it got cancelled, and then I booked the next trip with another engineer I was working with, this time to Israel, which then had a war 2 days before I was leaving.
Okay.
So I remained in Vienna. And during this time, me and Stefan obviously talked a lot, and Stefan had this very strong idea about the consumer-facing marketplace, Minimist, which was based on circles and so on. And at some point around November, we went to what's it called? The big Portuguese Web Summit.
Web Summit.
Yes.
Yeah.
In Lisbon. And we also decided to build a prototype, but this time focusing instead on B2B. So then I became co-founder with him in the company Minimist, where we were building a B2B software for chains, for secondhand stores to quickly digitize inventory and sell it online.
Okay, that's very cool. You said there was the earthquake, there was the war. Was it like meant to be, or is there a function of life that you cannot influence?
Possibly, yeah. It's all, in my opinion, random. I don't believe in higher deities, so. But it turned out well.
Yeah.
Here we are, and we have a company that is gaining traction and that actually has a nice offer.
Yes.
And we're 6 people, and it's moving forward.
It is moving forward. Yes, that's amazing. And you're also now using more, you can see more and more videos and content about minimists, and people start to get to know minimists. So you applied your lessons, because it's basically what my next question was, like, if you compare Henrik, 16 years old, first consultancy, to today's Henrik.
Yeah.
How did he change? What is the reflection about it?
Well, I think I became a better person.
Okay.
You know, when you're young, you have all these traits that sort of gets worn off over time. Sort of you're a rock on a beach, and the water, it moves you with all the other rocks, and you become better at things, including in the human condition. So that's one. Then also, I would say, like obviously building startups and doing all the mistakes. When you're 16, you don't have any idea how many mistakes you're going to do. So you do them all. And then you learn the hard way. So I've done a lot of that.
Yeah. And quite successfully, because you're always very humble. Also on the of course, you mentioned your last startup, Corsic. Mm-hmm. It's quite successful from what I checked. So,
well, it depends on what you compare with, I would say.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. I think if you compare to the best companies in the world, it's not successful at all.
Okay.
You know, if you compare to just being an employee, and I'm air quoting here, then it is something that came out of me and my co-founders' minds, that was built from scratch, that had customers, and that became something.
It brought value to
some. Yeah, it brought value to
that's
people.
Amazing. Yeah.
So from that sense, very successful, right? But there are levels, right? And I think company building is one of those things that is extremely multifaceted. And I've also come to the realization that when it comes to PR, for example, I'm probably not the guy. I know it's needed. And I'm super happy that we have Anna as a co-founder here at Minimist, and Stefan, who are extremely extroverted, letting me then focus on tech. Because in Corsic, I was both CTO and CEO. And it was this constant conflict of trying to do the right thing and always feeling like you're not enough.
I understand.
And sometimes I still feel that, but at least it's more localized now, and maybe I can make things more effective around me to make myself enough over time.
Do you consider yourself an introvert?
No, I'm not.
Okay, I thought so.
Yeah,
but
I'm not much of a sort of going public and flaunting myself. That's a very negatively connotated word, not my intention. But I do like to be judged by what I know. Like I like the sort of idea of quality, and that if I do something good, that is what should judge me. And then it's sort of hard for me to, I guess, talk in a way that appeals to, I don't know. It just has never worked out for me in that sense, you know.
But it makes that's my experience with you. Makes me you come across very humble, and you do lots of amazing stuff. So
thank you.
That's cool. I'm very interested in also this aspect of. I see you as a guy who gets things done continuously. Mm-hmm. What is the recipe? What is the secret sauce? What is the if we're thinking about how to organize things, to get things finished, get things done, productivity. I see there is lots of efforts from your co-founders and colleagues to protect your time, because I think they know what is your main skill and where is your time best at use. But what are other things that people out there could learn from you and say, okay, this was key for me to get more things done, get more productive?
Well, I'll be standing again on the shoulder of giants. I've read my way to many of these things. As a C-level, what you want to do is the important things, and almost never the only urgent things, but not important. And then if you can consistently do the important things, then your company will be really well off in the long run, because you will have given direction and strategy to the people working with you. And then you will collaborate to make that happen. So if you constantly prioritize by that, then you're in a better position to start with. But obviously also in a small startup, you're a Swiss Army knife. And then you have to do everything. And then it becomes very hard to prioritize. You both have to maintain existing customers and fix bugs, but also think towards the future and strategy. So it's constantly moving between these, and then also saying no to a lot of things. This is not something I should be doing, or this is not our current focus, or this is good enough. Yeah. So from someone who sort of came from a very technical side of what is the perfect enterprise system that always computes the right thing, never halts and never goes outside its specification. Coming into startups, it's very different, because you need to be computing in some way, outputting things that are good enough but not perfect. And that's been a hard lesson for me to learn.
Yeah. I mean, that's easier said than done.
Yeah, it is.
That's the point. Because prioritization on paper is nice, but if you're super busy in the short term with the short-term stuff, as you said, the more smaller the startup, the more you have to do it. Yeah. The bigger, the more time you can shift between people who can do it better.
And when you're building product, it's also hard to prioritize. When you get customers and they sign, they shift from looking at the important things to looking at the urgent things, because they want the product to be perfect now, because they're paying for it. And then when you're asking people on the street, what would you like? They can often be convincing that they want something that they don't actually want to pay for. And then internally, you also have this priority list of what you need to build the next sort of generation of the system, the architectural, the technical depth, stuff like that. And then you have to prioritize all of these at the same time. Easier said than done. And you have to figure out for the customers, what are the important things again, even if they are not urgent, because that is what your company will grow with. And of course, you have to do the urgent things if they are urgent by stopping the workflow in some fashion, or they are so bad that it stops the customers from retaining over time. And trying to find precisely the answers to these questions, that's the hard part. Yeah.
That's also something that I have a little journey the last 10, 15 years with agile software development versus you have these planning approaches. And I always say it starts with the technology. If the code is not able to continuously deliver stuff, how would you be able to work really in a agile way? What is your take on this? Because it's somehow intertwined, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like if you can release more often, more frequent, you can do smaller iterations. You have more chances to change, and you have more chances to try alternatives that might work. There is a really good book called Product Development Flow. I have to look up the author. It's a blue book, yellow text, big letters. And it goes through like chapter by chapter, looking at one mathematical approach after the other of how you can see work in a technical system like an engineering organization as a queuing system in some fashion. How do you hedge work? How do you prioritize things that are uncertain? How do you think about lead time and cycle time?
So there's quite a lot of nonlinear math in that. Mathematics.
Yeah.
In the queuing theories.
Yeah, that was actually one of the latter books I read. Some of the first books have been sort of the Goldratt theory of constraints or Lean by Womack or what's it called? The anti-fragility literature.
Yes.
By Nicholas Taleb and Visa, The Rise of the Chaotic Organization, all highlighting different ways that you can collaborate to reach your goals and how distributed decision making can be made effective. And then also looking into, in terms of lean, maybe the value streams and how you can have this drumbeat of delivery going into CI, of course, cascading to every person working in this value stream up all the way to some product specification at the start. And how it is your job as a company to continuously improve the throughput of this value stream. So those are some mental tools and books that have helped me very much when thinking about it.
So one nugget I take for everyone is like read.
Yeah.
And how do you take the time to read?
Yeah, that's hard as well. But I see it as my job to read, or I see it as my job to go outside of just the urgent, doing the important things. So if I believe that these books will give important knowledge to me and therefore the company, then I can take the time without feeling guilty. I think that's what's stopping most people. They feel guilty they're not working on the urgent things.
Yes.
They're only working on the important things.
Where do you think does that come from?
I don't know, Lithuanian work ethic maybe.
Okay.
or maybe people have grown accustomed to being these cogs in the machine where they always have to do the same function constantly. Most people who start companies have already been employees and they know that it's a grind, kind of. So maybe they're used to it. You also hear it constantly that if you just stick to it long and hard enough, then you're going to succeed, which is not necessarily true. There is some truth to it, obviously, that maybe you do find the gold over the next boulder that you blast through. And then sometimes you just have to find a much better strategy. And then maybe with much less effort, you can reach the gold.
Because I'm asking because I'm very interested in also the emotional components of being a founder or working on something you want to be successful or wherever you want to go with your life. Because I see people, I'm also just an observer, and I see people basically controlled by their own emotions, sometimes very unconsciously, not seeing their own patterns. I'm not judging. It's like sometimes it's also the good way. But you mentioned a lot of things like where you prioritize not the urgent, but the important. So you need this kind of reflection or you need this kind of perspective to see, okay, here is my feeling holding me back. I'm going to change this. And I see this as a hard part where lots of people struggle.
Yeah, that can be true. Like finding when to take a step back and reflect is probably part of that, part of the hard.
Yeah.
But I'm super emotional in some ways.
Okay.
Like I feel very strongly about Minimist, building the company up and making it happen. I feel very strongly about collaboration and not like hiding information from each other. And I feel strongly about knowing a strategy, knowing what the objective is, what is the policy by which you want to reach it, what are the steps, the action plan to reach it, what is our unfair advantage, and constantly having that in mind when you execute. And then sometimes, like people I work with or customers, they force you into a mindset of scarcity where you become stressed and you make globally irrational decisions where you prioritize things that are pushed onto you. And to an extent, that's a good thing. That I don't agree to that. I don't maybe follow every such push. So there is these 5 personality traits, and one of them is agreeableness.
Yeah.
Is empathy another one?
Agreeableness. You're talking about big 5 personality.
Yeah.
Empathy is in agreeableness.
No.
No, you have agreeableness is compassion and politeness. Basically speaking, agreeableness is like.
Yeah, but agreeableness is when you say no. Like I just said no to empathy being in agreeableness. So I'm disagreeable. So I'm a pretty disagreeable person from that particular trait, but I still have empathy. So I think that's a good combination.
There is 2 sub-traits. I've looked quite into the big 5.
Okay.
And that's exactly also with me. It has 2 sub-traits which can be against each other. Like you have the empathy, you feel the other people, but the other part is politeness.
Right.
And I'm like, I've analyzed a lot about me and other people, and also we do the personality tests. I'm quite not polite, but I'm very, very low in polite, like 2nd percentile, 2%, something very, very small. Okay. So I would like to talk everyone to their faces. Pardon me? Yes. Yeah. I think that's just the biological part, but we can learn. But the second part is like the empathy. So it's like the gas and the brakes.
Okay.
I want to be rude, maybe, but at the same time, I don't want to hurt your feelings.
Okay.
And I had to realize this to figure out why I'm struggling to be direct and clear. And especially, I think in leadership, you need to be direct and clear, and being kind of rude naturally helps you at least with clarity. Sometimes you come across maybe not that likable, but still, if you have the empathy in place.
Yeah. You see where they're coming from.
It's a learning curve.
And I think that I also heard this quote that you should see the problem, not the person. Or you should attack the problem, not the person.
Yes.
And if you do that, then you can be disagreeable about the problems, but not against the persons.
Yes.
But you also said that as a leader, like I'd love to hear more about your background. I guess it's a little bit of a sub-quest here, but like, how did you come to this position?
How did I come to this position? Pretty much I was in the corporate world. I studied computer science back in the days. That's around 15 years ago or something. And then I started in the corporate world, and I was very naive and very young. And I was like, hey, it was basically one of the bigger companies in Austria in sports betting. Novomatic, it's a big gaming corporation. And there were so many coincidences. I was like, first I was coding for the university, and then later I came into this project management position. And then it was about the mobile sports betting. And before that, I was coding in this cross-platform. There was still the BlackBerry, Android, and iOS, and there were the first approaches, Xamarin, something like that.
C# developer as well.
C#, yes. And then I came into this company, and I was like, where is the mobile betting? And it's like, we're in Austria. We're always a couple years behind on the innovation curve, behind Germany, and maybe Germany is behind the US, and maybe China is... We see how it plays out. Let's see how it plays out. And I was like, where is the mobile sports betting? And then I found it, and I was like, I want to do stuff like that. And it was broken. It didn't work. It was like the registration didn't really work. The live betting didn't really work. And I figured my way out. And of course, it exploded kind of.
Okay.
But which was not a function of me. It was a function of the market, because everybody had their phones out, and I already saw it.
And you saw an opportunity.
The smart people made it work. I just tried to push the topic. And during that time, I always say, like, the only boss who really was a leader when I was in the corporate world, he trusted me, and he said, okay, that's the vision. You just do. If you need something, I trust you. Do it. And yeah, it worked by itself. But I was very with an unconventional approach. Like I got angry a lot. I was not very reflected.
Okay.
So I pushed through, and the numbers were good, but not everything was good, of course. So,
Right, you were Steve Jobs at your work site.
No, that's a huge overstatement. But and then it got me thinking. I was always about the innovation because I saw the mobile, I saw then the AI trends, and I saw the machine learning. I was never the expert, but I collected lots of dots, and that was always the golden thread: innovation. What is? That's also why we're here. Like I'm inviting the innovators for the podcast because I want to know. How are you thinking? I couldn't figure it out with the video call. Now I sit you down here and we figure out how is your mind working.
Right.
Because I'm always interested in that. And I found my niche. Now we do the consulting for funding applications about innovation. So I have the luxury to see people like you every day.
Would you say that during all these calls, you can synthesize some of these gold particles of what innovation actually is?
But it's... First of all, I mean, there is the definition of how the funding application wanted to be written. So that's quite the boring thing. But there is an aspect of novelty, that's for sure. There is mostly, in this world I'm living, an aspect of technology, but it also has to be useful. And what I see often in the scientific world is like, there is novelty, but sometimes it's not a product. It doesn't create value, and we are the masters of this in Austria. We are in for example in quantum computing. We are like leading, but there is no startups. There is no spin-offs.
Okay.
I mean, there is one big Quantum Industries, as far as I know.
Okay.
But they are. We have to look into it, the details where they are. Yeah. But it's like there is a culture of. Complaining about that there is not much startups going on in Austria.
Okay.
On the other hand, we are very good with the basic science. So there has to be an aspect of usefulness.
That there is a lot of support for the startups, like obviously for Minimist in this case.
It's growing nowadays.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of people very engaged when we talk to them about what we're doing, and so it feels very encouraging here in Austria.
Yes, it's getting better and better and better. Yeah. It's really a growing ecosystem. I think there is not enough investor money. I think there is quite the challenges to get it, because it's like a function of how can you invest? How much taxes do you have to pay? Now we have the FlexCo, which is a good development, but it's not enough in my opinion. Right. It could be more steps taken.
But I mean, we're immediately doing a cross-European company in Minimist. Yes. And we're really immediately seeing then that there are different jurisdictions out there. So
yes.
Everything is complicated.
Yes.
Like hiring people across the European Union and tax law and the formalia as well. What do you have to have on the website in order to sell, and so on. It's almost like every market you enter, you need like a big buffer of money. But the markets aren't big in comparison to other markets. Like if you were going into China, you'd have a homogeneous market, the same in the US, maybe the same in Brazil, like these huge countries where you make it in one local place and then it can cascade out. So, I mean, there's the EU Inc. maybe happening, which could be super beneficial.
Hopefully,
I also see it as like, I'm a Swede, obviously, coming to Austria. And there are different ways of doing the legal work and running a company. That shouldn't have to be. It should be unified, in my opinion. We are a common market, right?
I absolutely agree. I mean, that was also the big idea of the European Union. Make it simple, make it one, and make it simple and useful. It is a big market. If you look at the numbers, it's a very big market, but we could do much better in making it easier for startups, for founders, also like the AI Act and data compliance laws.
Yeah,
what do you think about that? That's very interesting.
That's a thorny topic, right? Because on one hand side, it is kind of bad if AI becomes super intelligent, AGI, and then kills everyone.
Obviously,
we can agree on that.
Yes.
On the other hand, it's also a race to the bottom globally, because globally there are no laws around this, and there can't be because of all the jurisdictions. And then maybe people who have the funding, then they're going to do what gets them profit and not necessarily think about the effects. So in that sense, globally, maybe the EU Act, the AI Act in the EU, plays a role to make those companies think twice, because, like you said, the EU is a big market, so they want to sell their products here. On the other hand, it's opaque. We're talking about developing an alien intelligence, more or less, or it feels that way when you interact with it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then how do you really know what it thinks? Transparent AI or interpretable AI has gotten a very long way in the last couple of years. There are fantastic papers being written by Anthropic and the OpenAI team, and they're super interesting to read. But it also shows how much these foundational models can do, and how little we can control them in the end. Because we have like this thin fine-tuning pass at the end of everything. But it can equally be disrupted by fine-tuning one more time for a specific use case, and suddenly you remove some of the human reinforcement learning that kept the model in check, for example. So in that sense, it's good to have some guidelines to go by. But we're also in an AI race where we're up against the US, where we're up against China, and the European Union doesn't have, except Mistral, large AI companies that are competitive. Maybe 11 labs.
Yeah.
But they're not really a foundational model. They do speech. So why is that? And to part, sure, regulation, but I think a much bigger part is the lack of funding. It's much harder to raise money in the European Union. When you raise money in the European Union, you do it for more classical startups, for SaaS startups. You have to start small, more or less, hire and grow as you go. Whilst in the sort of more, let's throw money at the problem attitude that we have across the pond, it can be that, okay, you hire a team, you got 5-6 engineers to start with. Now you try the idea and see if it works. Because then you can build it out, and then you have an entry point to the market. Here it's like at every step of the way, you have to show proof points that it works.
Yes.
And while, I mean, showing proof points all along the way is a trade-off where you trade more time to build a startup versus losing less capital, right? But capital is something that people made up. It's all in our minds, and it's something that is potentially infinite, and we choose to constrain ourselves by it.
Money is not real, or what's the point?
Yeah, like money is a societal agreement about value of something.
Which AI will shake up in a way, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if the robot is doing the field work and everything, like our time exchange for work will be very different.
It's
in
getting
the coming
disrupted.
Years. It's
definitely
getting disrupted.
Like you see engineering companies not hiring juniors anymore. So where will the seniors come from if we don't hire juniors?
Yeah.
For example. But also if you replace people with capital in the form of AI, then people won't have jobs, and then we have to find alternative solutions.
So, yeah. And we see the crazy things like Meta hiring one guy for, I don't know what, like NBA star, 250 million or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is your thought on that?
Well, it's
That's
like
crazy.
It's like the NBA games where they hire superstars for millions and millions of dollars. So there is logic to it. It reduces the search friction for Meta, because they can say, we offer you more or less infinite money, and here, come work for us. They only need a team of, I don't know, X number of people. So it's very limited in the number of people that they are looking for, and the population is huge. So they're throwing away all the arguments against going to them that are monetary, at least. And then they're saying, we want the best.
Of course.
So I don't have many opinions on that. It's their money. They can do what they want with it. When it comes to innovation in the European Union, I think it's great that there are government grants. That is one of the reasons we actually are in Austria. That can help companies get started. So that's actually a great thing. The question then becomes, how do we go from just getting started to growth and scale up? And how does the European Union manage that and compete internationally on that level?
I mean, I see this topic, of course, I see lots of things. I always tell everyone who wants to become a new customer, and we do the funding consulting, always do investor and try to make money and do the grants, like all the three things at the same time, because it's getting harder to get everything. Like, and you also need each of these parts together. Like, if you have more money, you can even get the funding. Sometimes it's a precondition to have money to get the funding, and it's easier to get an investor if you have the funding, and vice versa. So
absolutely,
I see that, and I see the European Union here. I mean, in Austria, it takes. If you do the application, it takes around 3 to 4 months until you have feedback on it. But if you go up to the European level, it takes even way longer. And it's so competitive. It's so that's a road that not many startups should go, and it's so much effort. It's like just an example. We worked with someone, and they got declined, and the document that gave the reason why it's declined was 17 pages with scientific citations. Okay. So you can imagine how much you have to put into effort into the application to even apply. Yeah. But it was it is, on the other hand, it's very, very good feedback. Like, you have very good data points that you can put as a feedback and improve.
Yeah, but that's also search friction, right?
It's
the European
a symptom,
Union, they want to search for the startups that in the end have the impact they want, the objectives that they want. So maybe impact, climate impact, or they want societal impact, or they want X, Y, Z. And they do it via science or via review and checking boxes. If you look at VCs, they have a funding hypothesis, and they say that we will fund startups that are in this vertical where we have experience. And then you come into a different kind of metric system where you have latent expertise or latent knowledge guiding their decisions, where knowledge that cannot be explicitly and precisely articulated might have a very large effect on the decision itself. That comes from experience of those people who have previously worked in the industries. And then instead you have a plethora of different VCs with different hypotheses.
Actually, one of these is, you talked about the big five personality. One of these is like, what are the personalities of the founders? What is the team? How do you see this topic? I thought about this a lot. Like, what is the combination of the personalities? How do you set the team? There is no objective metric. There is no system to measure it. How do you go about this? How do you make a decision on this one?
Well, I think when it comes to the founding team, it's very important that they can complement each other and they can agree with each other's differences. And if those two happen, then you're in a good place.
Complementing skills.
Yeah, or personalities. Like, we do have different personalities that are also culturally influenced. Stefan comes from New Zealand, where just the way of talking is that you can talk over each other, you joke a lot more. Maybe you're a bit rougher with the language, but you mean it in a funny, jokingly way. Whilst in Sweden, it's more of a taking turns and even taking a little space in between answering back a question or a statement from the other person. And then we are both extroverts. Anna is more introvert, which means also differences in communicating, the thinking before saying versus the thinking as saying, which is more Stefan. And they can complement, but they have to be managed as well, in the sense that if you don't think about them, they can become detrimental to collaboration.
Yeah, you have to see your differences.
Yeah, and leave room for the people who think through what they say before they say it, instead of thinking as saying it. Nothing is better or worse. It is just different. Yeah, and the cultures are different. Yes. Like, we have New Zealand, Austrian, and Swedish here in the founding team, which is very sort of different cultures, I would say.
But it also is amazing, right? It's like to see this. It's this kind of diversity.
Yeah,
you can learn from each other. That's quite the experience.
I think so. Like, I'm fairly happy with the way we are. There are rooms for improvement, like always. And startups are pressure cookers of stress.
Yeah.
So trying to figure out everything at the same time, it's almost superhuman. And I think that's why so many startups do fail. So hopefully we will prevail and succeed where others do fail.
Yeah.
No one knows. Time will tell.
Yeah. I mean, that's also something that's maybe a gold nugget. It's like, if you do a startup, there will be pressure. And we talked about the personalities. Like, I heard from the psychological point of view, it's like under pressure, your measured big five, your biology of your personality basically takes over. There is actually some science behind what is the entrepreneur's personality best fit.
Okay.
Like high in openness.
Yeah.
Because you need new ideas and you get basically dopamine if you get a new situation. Because a person low in openness shies away from the new situation, but high in openness.
That one I'm definitely high on.
Massive, yes, for
so.
sure. Yes.
It's almost painful not to be able to think through new ideas.
Yes. And then I think the higher the extroversion, the more dopamine you get from interacting with people, obviously.
Yeah. So when we were fundraising the first time, then me and Stefan were out, we were mingling, and I like maybe a bit more towards a deep talk like we're doing.
Yeah.
Stefan is a machine, though. He can go and he can talk to different people over and over again in one evening. And that's really, truly a super skill when you're fundraising. So
yes,
when I
definitely.
was...
You have to talk to so many people.
Yeah. I was tired at like midnight. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to go home. And he's like, I have a cold. I'm losing my voice. But there is a party down by the channel. I'm going to go there and see who I found. And it turned out that we actually got one investor from him attending that party. Yeah. So
actually, the textbook definition is you get energy from interaction with other people, or you drain energy. Like you get energy when you're alone.
Yeah.
So he's definitely more extroverted.
Definitely more than me. Yeah, he's probably the most extroverted person I know.
Yeah, which is a super skill. Yes, when you say fundraising events. If I do events, fundraising, startup events, blah blah blah, I need a break.
Yeah, same. What more do we have? So we have conscientiousness.
Yeah, you're also high on this.
It can be, right? But it can also hurt you massively. Like in Q2, I was super conscientious with building the product and the code.
Yes.
To an extent, it was an accounting system, so maybe not a bad thing. But I was taking it to an extreme, and that was a bad thing.
So you were working too much?
Yeah, I was working, I was trying to polish it too much when the problem was no marketing, no sales, and no PMF.
Understood.
And then I was like, what if I make the product better? To an extent, I was right in the sense that building an accounting system is a wide thing. You have to tick all the boxes. You have to have finance vouchers. You have to have transactions, maybe outlays or expenses. You have to have end of year accounting, closing the accounts, closing the books, and so on and so on and so on. So you have to tick all the boxes, and then you can call yourself an accounting system. But I think I dove a bit too deep in some aspects of it. I built like our own stream processing framework, for example.
Own framework?
Yeah, based on Millwheel from Google, which was super interesting at the time.
Yeah.
For me.
So you made the experience that it can also hinder you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like these people are very detail oriented.
Yeah.
They are very orderly. Everything is very like the socks in the closet. They are.
But now we're seeing a different market dynamic. Before, 40 years ago, you could be very conscientious when it came to programming, but then it became easier and easier. We got Ruby on Rails, we got .NET, we got all the frameworks that would help you build quickly, still quicker than before. And now we have coding with AI, and then suddenly the AI are kind of sloppy, but you get something out.
Yes.
So it's, in my opinion, the opposite of conscientiousness. Like you just want the product out, and then you can test it. I think that can be a very good strategy when it comes to building startups.
Absolutely. Because you get the
immediate feedback.
Fast.
Yeah,
you get
exactly.
immediate feedback from the real market.
We can, if we want conscientiousness to be a positive thing, we can say at least you're conscientious about getting customer feedback.
Yes. But it's like, I think it's always a super useful tool to reflect and figure
absolutely.
out what is your strength.
It is. So, and the one I was talking about was agreeableness or amicability.
Yes.
Kindness, helpfulness, and willingness to cooperate. And I was primarily saying that I have an easy time to say no to something that when I think it's wrong.
Easy? You said an easy time?
Yeah. It's easy for me to say this is incorrect,
Yes.
and disagreeing. If someone says it's A and I say no, it's B. But I want to, I strive to be better in kindness and like empathy with people.
Did you ever work alone completely on a project for a long time?
I've worked a lot alone. Open source was a lot alone.
Yeah.
You do get people sort of hit and drive kind of pull requests sometimes, but a lot of it is alone.
But you enjoy more working with a team?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's much more fun. Also, it moves a lot faster.
Yes.
And you do get more feedback on your ideas, and then you can think through them quicker and try more things. Yeah. So a lot of upsides.
Let's pivot maybe a little bit on the big vision of Minimist.
Yeah.
I see there is a lots of impact drive from your side and also from your co-founders. What is the big vision? How do you envision it in the future? What's your...
Well, we want to make secondhand the default choice. So we want you to, instead of going to H&M or some online shops or a store, you search Minimist for the items that you're looking for, and we can direct you to our partner secondhand stores that have those items. And it's going to be like shopping online for new items, only that you get to reuse, and therefore you don't have to produce more. To an extent, of course, you still need an influx of new things, but people massively overconsume new items when they don't need it. So items that other people can enjoy. And we want to enable that.
Yes.
And then in the long run, even longer run, who says the mode that you will doing the shopping in? Maybe you will have your personal agent, your assistant shopping for you, knowing your colors, your eye color, what you fit in, your skin color, what you prefer, your style, and it'll automatically search that way for you, bid for you. It will have its own wallet that you've delegated to it. And it will be interacting maybe primarily with other agents from the sellers, where it can negotiate a price that fits your budget and their ability to offer it. And that's where Minimists want to be. We want to be the market maker in that transaction.
Okay. So in both directions, like I want to also sell stuff, become the store. I could also be a private person who wants to sell my stuff and then have a little... Is this the focus, or are you focusing on the big
store? We're not focusing on B2C.
Yes.
Not at the moment. And that is primarily because in order to build up a company that works with secondhand, you need supply. Our partners, our customers, they have that supply, and we can help them to sell it. So that's our focus. And I think it makes a lot of strategy sense to build where you're standing and where you're seeing product market fit. And this is where we're seeing it right now. So that's what we're focusing on.
What will be the biggest challenge to come to the AI agent situation?
Determinism, maybe, or the lack thereof. The fact that they're probabilistic in nature, so it's a bit random how they actually act in the end.
Especially for a guy who wants to build a reliable, always working systems. That must
My
be
conscientiousness is like nagging me like OCD.
How can you do that?
No, but again, what is the real world event, right? And in the end, humans will want to consume. There are no facts about what you fit best in. There are opinions, and the agents are at some level now where they can help you form that opinion, or maybe propagate your opinion onto the sellers and negotiate on your behalf. So it is already not a mathematical process doing this shopping. So there is no need to try and make it one. What we do want to make mathematical, in the sense that it's deterministic, of course, is the actual transactions and the accounting and all of these things that just have to work. It should be taking a stance way behind the actual interaction with the customer, because the customer interaction is what we care about, what the seller cares about, what the customer obviously goes there for. Everything should just work on a tech basis. So I see this as a great opportunity to make tech finally take a backstage to the human interactions while maintaining all the positive sides of tech, like strong analytics, automatic accounting, automatic inventory management, and so on.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, it's like, again, a human judging with his opinion if the agent is doing what feels right. So even this is not deterministic.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why OpenAI fine-tunes to be super human pleasing and be saying all the right things to the human and put all the smileys in because it feels better to read it. When it's like people prefer Pepsi over Coke in blind test because it's sweeter initially when you take a small sip, right? It's the same with the AI output.
So I see it's going to be an amazingly challenging but also very interesting future.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Without challenges, where would the fun be? Right?
Yeah, for a conscientious person, it has to be. Well, Henrik, I think it was a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you so much to give us a glimpse of an insight into your brain and into your life. It was amazing.